I loved to escape into a TV show or another relationship or a couple too many glasses of wine, something like that. And I realized that that doesn't make the pain go away.
Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, episode number 275. In this episode, you're going to hear from Juni Boucher. Juni is a nutritional therapy practitioner, certified meditation teacher, and breast cancer survivor who is passionate about helping people balance their hormones holistically so they can feel happy, vibrant, and fulfilled. In this episode, Juni and we talk about health and how food is meant to be enjoyed. And we also talk about seeking pleasure and daydreaming and overcoming hardship. So stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this episode. But first, I got to say, it's a new year. There are a lot of changes coming to Ordinary to Badass, and I've been spending a lot of time reflecting on it. So I'm excited to be talking to you guys about that going forward. But one small change this last probably year, maybe longer, on this podcast, we've only been talking about things that are like health and finances and like meditation or self-care, that kind of thing. But I'm going to go back to expanding it. Let's be a little bit more expansive and go back to the roots of the show where we talk to all the badasses. All right. So there's definitely more changes coming, and you will hear about that going forward. But I just wanted to give you that tidbit to chew on. If you love this podcast, head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and review. Every single time you do that, it helps this podcast and helps other badasses just like you to find the show. All right. With that, let's get to it. Welcome to Ordinary to Badass. Whether you're ordinary or badass, I am so glad you're here. Today's guest is Juni Boucher. Juni, thank you so much for being here. Excited to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we go any further, I've got to ask you, do you consider yourself ordinary or badass?
Badass, for sure. It's funny. I was actually thinking about this before we recorded, and just saying it, there was that little voice that was like, who do you think you are? But you know what? That's the thing about being a badass. It doesn't eliminate that voice. You just kind of say, you're funny. Like you just have to move on and recognize that voice is probably always going to come up from time to time. And being a badass just means being like, that's interesting. Thanks for mentioning it. And just moving on.
Yeah. And we've done about 250 episodes of this podcast, and I've never heard anybody say that. But I think that that's the reality of it. I think a lot of us go through that little like imposter syndrome, or like, ooh, should I just claim it or own it? So I love that you brought that part of it up. So thank you for that. And the other thing is,
yeah, no problem.
Have you always felt like a badass, or was it something that triggered that along the way, or a series of steps?
I will say growing up, I did like to challenge myself, but I certainly didn't feel like a badass. That is a for sure. And I had kind of a specific event in my life that I think really turned things around for me. And that was being diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 41. So about three years ago. And I just going through an experience like that, or any real crisis, will cause you to look at your life and evaluate things and realize how precious life is. And I just stopped wanting to do things I didn't want to do. And I started reading a lot. I don't know, I'm sure using the term badass, you're probably familiar with Jen Sincero and her badass books. And I love her. And just recognizing that badass was in my head, and whether or not I wanted to take a chance on myself was a choice I could make. There was really nothing holding me back. I mean, I had to work to change my life, and I completely overhauled, changing my job, changing my, living situation, my relationships, and the way that I dealt with my own feelings. And especially that imposter syndrome. You know, I wasn't following my dreams because I thought, well, I need to do this, this, and this. And, here I am. Now I feel like I'm living. I would say there are places I want to go in my life that I'm not quite at, but I truly believe I'm going to get there because I believe. And I think believing is really at the core of feeling and being a badass.
How do you start to believe?
That's a great question. How did I start to believe? I think just recognizing what I wanted in life, doing a little bit of daydreaming. What if I had no fear, what would I be doing? And then recognizing that fear is a choice. If we, fear is always going to be present, but if we decide to just move forward despite our fear, that I think taking little steps, being willing to be uncomfortable and doing that over and over again, really, when you start doing that, a week later, 3 months later, 6 months later, 5 years later, you look back on these things that you thought you had no right to do and you've mastered them.
Oh, to beers, you heard it from Juni. If I had no fear, what would I be doing? Ask yourself that question. I think it's so powerful. So I can't wait to dig in to hear more of your story. First, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm sorry, you're cutting out a little bit there. What was
Sure.
the question?
So will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in California. I'm a West Coast girl, and I grew up loving anything artsy. I had two brothers. I was kind of a tomboy. I'm lucky that my parents let me do a lot of activities and things. I had a happy childhood. My parents got divorced, so I was kind of shuffling back and forth and between houses, and that was a little bit lonely for me. I had to. There were times in my life where I just didn't know people. Like if I'd go to my dad's house, I didn't really have any friends because I was only there on the weekends. I wasn't going to school there and whatnot. So I started getting really into theater arts and singing. And that's a great thing in terms of cultivating your badassery, because for a lot of people, it's terrifying to be on a stage. I think that's a big thing. And when you can walk into that kind of discomfort and feel the rush of performing arts or something like that, it's a pretty infectious and addictive type of rush. And had a pretty good experience in high school. I went to UC Santa Cruz and for college, and kind of just walked through life feeling pretty good, but definitely thinking, well, I'm not that shy, but I'm not the prettiest girl in the room. I'm not I'm fairly intelligent, but I'm not the smartest kid in the room. Just kind of always sort of putting myself in like second place. And in the back of my head, always feeling like there was something more out there for me, and being willing to look at it and explore and be a little bit afraid. And yeah, I had a great time in college. moved to Los Angeles, I was doing all sorts of things out there. I did a little bit of voiceover work for a while. I was doing the acting thing for a while, and then I met met somebody. We fell in love. We moved to Puerto Rico, which at the time of this recording, they're going through a lot right now. So I'm sending some love to Puerto Rico. Hopefully, by the time this airs, things are much better. And Yeah, we lived out there. We had a little restaurant that we were collaborating with another couple on. That was fun. Went through a really hard breakup with that relationship. Kind of things kind of fell apart on the day of our wedding, which was never fun. And then that's probably turned into one of the hardest times in my life. Moving back to California with a really broken heart. We're on good terms now, but it was just a very hard time. And I think that was the least badass I ever felt. It was just extreme heartbreak. And yeah, after that point, I kind of picked myself back up, got my life back together, was doing well, working a job, making good money in the legal industry. And then a couple of years later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I found my cancer myself. I was lucky. I immediately got into the doctor and the process kind of went along quickly. Luckily, it was caught early. A lot of people don't realize with breast cancer that for the most part, it's not genetics. It's a lot of it can be lifestyle or environmental. And that's why it's super important to be checking, doing self exams, being familiar with your body. And that was another really tough time in my life. It was scary, very scary. But as I mentioned before, it was a time to really look and take stock at what I was doing with my life. And was I truly happy? Was I really passionate about the things I was doing? And I don't know, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, if it's not a bleep yes, it's a no. And that was kind of how I evaluated my life. Was everything something I really wanted to be doing? And yeah, I don't always want to clean my toilets. That's something I just have to do. But in the bigger picture, was this job what I really wanted to do? It was a decent job. I liked my bosses, I liked my coworkers, but it wasn't fulfilling my passion anymore. And I had always been really interested in nutrition because I'd had some health problems growing up. I had some a common thing called Hashimoto's disease. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's a really common autoimmune thyroid disease. I was diagnosed with that when I was in high school, and that was something that I started to explore nutrition, and I was able to turn my autoimmune disease around by just changing my diet. And so when I was diagnosed with cancer, I really leaned into the nutrition thing. And again, it helped me get through that along with supportive friends and family and a community. And I just decided that I wanted to pursue my passion again. And we go into lockdown in 2020. And I said, this seems like the perfect time to go back to school. I was still working my full-time job, went back to school for nutrition, and I really made a decision at that point to do what I wanted to do and be a badass about it. I kind of didn't give myself the option of giving up. And when you make that switch in your head of just, this is what I'm going to do. I mean, when I look at it now, I'm like, how was I working a full-time job and starting a new business and going back to school? It was a lot, but I was so inspired that I was able to do it. And I worked both jobs for close to a year. And then it was my goal in 2022 to go full time with my nutrition practice. I did that, and I now feel like I'm living the exact life I want to be living, for the most part, and I mean, everybody is always, I think goals are always like a moving thing. Once you reach one goal, you hit another goal. And yeah, I feel happier and healthier than I ever have. But it took a lot because I evaluated my relationship. I was with an incredible person, but it just wasn't quite working anymore. And we tried really hard and for quite a while. And I finally had to say, I don't think this is right. I think both of us deserve to be really happy, which that can be tough too. When you have a relationship that doesn't really have major problems and you like the other person, but just something in your heart doesn't, it just doesn't click. And I moved. So I moved from that relationship. I moved where I was living from the Bay Area to Los Angeles and eventually to Portland, Oregon. And and now I'm here. I've gotten really into meditation, which I think is an incredible tool for badassery as well. And that's helped me with a lot of those thoughts that I've gotten throughout this journey of saying, you can't do that. Who do you think you are? Um, but what about this? You know, you have to worry or consider things, but if you get caught in worry or you're constantly here or you're constantly in the past, you're never going to really be able to be present in the moment. And being present in the moment is I think part of living a badass life for sure.
Yes. So there's so much there that I want to dig into. First, let's talk about your relationship. Did you guys end up breaking up
Mhm.
on the day of the wedding, or did you get married and it happened later?
Well, yeah, it was kind of one of those terrible stories that you hear about. I mean, it probably the day of the wedding was really, yeah, things yeah, it was really the night of the wedding. I ended up going home on my own. Um and that was tough. And I don't want to say that like I don't there's always two people in a situation. Um I don't know if I'll ever fully understand what was going on in my partner's head at that moment. I mean, we had been together for 8 years, but yeah, it was something that on, the night of our wedding was just, uh, he didn't want to, yeah, he didn't want to come home and he couldn't really tell me why. And then a couple days later, there was, things just started falling apart. And, that was tough. Um, Apparently there was some lies that I didn't know about, that I still don't know if I know the full truth about things. But, people, yeah, I think about with relationships and they fall apart. I maybe should have seen some things that I didn't see or want to see. That's another that's another hard part about life and being a badass. I think sometimes involves being honest with yourself when it's extremely uncomfortable or painful.
Yeah. I think it's hard too when things kind of blindside you. Like looking back, you might be able to see it, but then like in the moment, it's like, it kind of takes you off balance or takes you off kilter. Um,
Hmm.
how did you bounce back from that?
Well, it took time. I really had to sit with feelings, sit with my own. Uh, I was really hard on myself for kind of feeling foolish and just hurt and confused. I kind of crawled into a cocoon for a while and really tried to sit with my feelings, therapy, focused on work, focused on myself. And sitting with feelings I've learned is one of the hardest things to do. And that's another way that I feel like meditation can be really helpful. Um, I loved to escape into a TV show or another relationship or a couple too many glasses of wine, something like that. And I realized that that doesn't make the pain go away. It just delays the reaction. So I had to fumble around with how do I feel these feelings. And I don't think I did a super great job of it in the beginning, but with trying over and over again to work on that, and then slowly starting to see that, oh, okay, when I actually call a friend or journal, or instead of going out to the bar, taking a bath, doing some yoga, meditating, and feeling these feelings, not necessarily understanding them, but feeling these feelings, you wake up the next day a little bit lighter. And then you start to see this is productive. And that's been a really powerful journey for me. And I'm 45 now, and I feel like it's took me a really, really long time to have the strength to do that. But that's part of being a badass, is being free from your own denial and courageous enough to feel your feelings, because it's tough.
Yeah. And I think that we're not necessarily taught as kids to feel our feelings. And I don't know that
No.
it's not like any bad intent by anybody, but it's like, oh, you're okay. It wasn't that bad. And we say these things to kids and forget, like, let them cry, let them feel how they're feeling.
Yes, absolutely. Like, yeah, don't cry. Oh, don't cry. I've been thinking about that. There are so many different ways that we teach in our culture not to feel feelings.
Right.
And it's good intentioned, especially with a parent. You don't want to see you don't we don't like to see each other in pain, and we most definitely don't like to experience pain.
Right.
So I think just recognizing pain is okay. Pain is just a call to grow or to learn, and that got a little bit loud.
Yes, I like that. So earlier you mentioned this idea
Mhm,
of nutrition and how it helped
mhm.
you with your autoimmune disease and also helped you with cancer. Can you talk about that? I think a lot of times we don't really associate how much our food and our lifestyle have to do with health issues or diseases we're facing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And this is another thing that I feel like a lot of the time, unless you experience the power of it yourself, people don't necessarily get the bug to start eating well. And until we hit a certain age, we feel really invincible. And that to me was one of the gifts of cancer. Getting cancer at a somewhat younger age was recognizing, oh, I'm not invincible. My choices do have consequences. And so, though, if you think about a car, the type of fuel that you're putting in a car matters. If you just started dumping gutter water into the engine of your car, it's gonna your car's gonna get ruined. If you have to fuel yourself well. There are more clean ways to fuel. Our bodies are amazing. They can withstand a lot, but eventually they're going to stop working at their best if we're not fueling them properly. And the amazing thing about food is that there is a lot of healing power to food. And this isn't a woo woo concept, it's just the truth. I think all of us know that eating well is important to good health. How to apply it doesn't necessarily come as easily. And I think also that we're taught in our culture, just like don't feel your feelings, you're taught to sometimes suppress your feelings or amplify your feelings with food. We use food in celebration. It's sacred to us in so many different ways. We use it to celebrate holidays, but we also use it to commiserate with each other. How many times is your girlfriend, you're going through a breakup and maybe your friend is like, I'm coming over with a bottle of wine and ice cream, or whatever. Like we use food in so many different emotional ways, and there's something wrong with that. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, and it's an intimate thing, and it's a loving thing to share food. But at the end of the day, food can push us in different directions health wise if you're not fueling yourself in a good way. And I think a lot of what we've done as a culture is we've lost the connection with our mind and body, so we don't really know what our bodies need, and we don't take the time because we're rushing around so much to sit and say, what do I really need right now? Because for the most part, I think most Americans could, or anybody in the world could, wake up in the morning, and if you really took the time to ground yourself, by the time you actually get hungry, if you don't wait till you're starving, you could say, okay, I feel like this would feel good in my body. And that's part of what I like to do in my nutrition practice. I don't like people to be on these restrictive diets. I don't like them to think that they can only eat salad with no dressing, and they're going to be so bored of everything they eat. Like, food is meant to be enjoyed, and healthy food can be super duper delicious and easy and simple, but it's about cultivating this relationship with your body and ultimately figuring out how to slow down enough, how to connect enough to make the next best choice. And sometimes that next best choice is having cheesecake with your husband or your best friend at dinner. But sometimes it means, and maybe more so, it means, okay, I can use some vegetables and a nice piece of fruit that's in season right now, and a good piece of fish or chicken, or a home cooked meal. I think if anybody who's had a home cooked meal, there's something really nourishing about that, even if it isn't quote unquote like something you would look at and say, ooh, that's super healthy. Just real food is very powerful and nourishing. And I mean, there are ways that you can prepare your body to heal. Like, let's say if you're going through a cancer diagnosis, if you're having surgery, there are ways you can eat so that you heal faster, so that you have the strength. If you have an autoimmune disease like I did, there are things you can do to calm your body down so that it can repair. Because oftentimes with an autoimmune disease, there's something that you're eating that the body it's throwing your body off. Like, autoimmune means that your body is attacking itself. And with the thyroid disease specifically, there are certain foods like gluten, and sometimes dairy that the body is recognizing as thyroid tissue. And that's why it can attack the thyroid. And, a lot of people don't believe that gluten sensitivity is a real thing, but I've seen it work in myself. I've seen it work in so many different clients and colleagues in the nutrition world that for the most part, it is highly accepted and can really be a life-changing thing, because it's not normal to feel tired all the time, to have psoriasis or eczema, um, to be bloated or have digestive problems. So food can actually help you feel badass.
Yeah, and it's so interesting too because I think a lot of times like doctors aren't telling people this. They're not telling
Mm-hmm.
people that, oh, you have psoriasis or you have an autoimmune disease and maybe your food could change this. Instead, it's often going towards medicine.
Yeah. And that's something I tell clients all the time too is, hey, your doctor isn't trained in nutrition. They don't really get that training. And maybe it's an extremely limited amount of information that they get. Their training is in how to treat the body with, pharmaceutical or more, surgeries, different things like that. That's how doctors work. And they tend to be treating the symptoms as opposed to the root cause. So if you
Yes.
go to more of someone who takes more of a holistic approach, where we're going to see, okay, instead of giving you this steroid that's going to potentially suppress your body's immune system and help you get rid of some of the psoriasis, but not necessarily take care of what is actually causing the psoriasis. The analogy I like to use with that is, if you're in a, again, I guess I'm using a lot of car analogies, but if you're driving in the car and the check engine light comes on, are you going to take it to the mechanic and figure out what's going on? Or are you just going to put a sticker over that light and keep driving until the car falls apart? And that's kind of, I'm not against doctors by any means. I
Right.
think that's an important thing, but taking a holistic approach to your health, especially with things like autoimmune disease, you can change your health drastically. And yeah, it might be slightly uncomfortable for a little bit to eliminate certain foods from your diet, but it gets easier. And once you start seeing the results, most people find it easy to never go back.
Right. And I imagine it's not just like physical change results. Those are one thing, but then like once you start seeing like the mental clarity or how you're feeling or the energy you have, that can be a game changer as well.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about it is that, your gut health, that's related a lot with, there's a lot of neurotransmitter and mood things where we're learning more and more about that relationship, the gut brain connection. So people with depression and anxiety, if it's mild to moderate, they've actually been able to show that exercise and nutrition can be just as effective as medication for people in that situation. If you're in you have severe anxiety or depression, there's no shame in using medication by any means, but there's so much that you can do without the side effects that you get from those pharmaceuticals, and it'll affect every area of your life. You'll feel better in your body. You'll probably look better, think better. Your mood can greatly improve. And I think that's such an exciting thing that we don't realize.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, one thing I'd like to go back to is you talked about the cheesecake, like how sometimes it's okay to indulge in the cheesecake, but there's often, especially for women, there's this guilt that we get or the shame for indulging and having the cheesecake or having the sweets. What do you tell your clients when they experience that?
I tell people, just like with meditation, there are, you're making, you have thoughts. That's just a thought. Is that gonna help you? Is that gonna help you move forward? Did you enjoy yourself? I would probably ask, was it enjoyable? Was that a pleasurable experience? How did that nourish you maybe on a different level? Was it really, when you go out with a friend and you have an amazing time and you've made this human connection, like that is nourishment in itself. But I do tell people, if you eat something that doesn't make you feel great, one of the most important things to do that will help you make better choices in the future is just tuning into your body. So, yeah, that probably tasted amazing in that moment. But then when you went home, or maybe let's say you had it at lunch, did you get this really strong energy lull later? Did you have a stomach ache the next day? Were you constipated? Did you have a foggy brain? Or like, touching getting in touch with your body again continue will foster for you, because you know cheesecake isn't necessarily going to make you feel bad. Maybe your body digested that perfectly well, and there you go. But if you know in your heart of hearts that you just don't do well with dairy, and you had a terrible stomach ache later, or were constipated for 2 days and felt kind of off, you might make a different choice the next time if you really sit with those feelings. So I think everything is an opportunity to just learn more about yourself, and inquiring if it was something that you ate in an emotional situation, or you felt like you noticed, every time I talk about my ex and that wedding day, I end up eating cheesecake. That's really interesting. That's something to look at too. And be curious about it, not judgmental, just curious. And what does that give you? Is it worth it to you? Is that going to help you reach your goals? Maybe it will. Maybe your goal was to eat cheesecake. But if your goal is something else, um, maybe that doesn't help you get closer to it.
Yeah, I think that food is so loaded, like loaded with so many different
Yes.
emotions and um yeah, it's just a lot to deal with or a lot for people to navigate through. But Rome wasn't built in a day. I think it takes some time sometimes to kind of figure out what's right for your body and what's not.
Yeah, it's a process, and it's never going to end. That's the thing, is it's never going to end. We don't, and that's something I think surprises people sometimes is, you may find a way of eating that really, really works for you, but we have seasons in our lives. What we
Absolutely.
ate in our maybe our teens isn't really going to serve us necessarily in our 40s. And what you ate in your 40s might have been not nearly enough for you as a younger kid, when you're, or if you were pregnant, in a growing phase. So recognizing that that health is a lifelong journey, and just, again, this sort of mindfulness, being curious, and cultivating this loving relationship with yourself that's not about shame, and will help you continue to make loving choices for yourself. And that, to me, is the ultimate health journey. And what I try to bring to my clients is just, because nobody wants to live a life of deprivation. But when you are loving to yourself, you want to give yourself and your body what it needs to thrive and feel good.
So, what do you tell your patients that are diagnosed with cancer? How can they heal their body through food? And then also, how can they love their body again?
That's a really good question. Fueling your body through cancer can be really challenging because it's such a stressful time for people. Sometimes you don't want to eat because either you're stressed, or maybe you feel nauseous because you're going through chemotherapy. It's, that there are different phases to that as well. Like in the first part of a cancer journey, you're probably just in a lot of shock even before you start going through treatments. Just hearing those words, "you have cancer," nobody's prepared for that, I'm convinced. Even if you feel like you have this family history and you knew it was likely, you're just never prepared. So I tell my clients, we need to fuel your body for stress. And that oftentimes means just eating a very balanced, nutrient dense diet. um, a lot of people going through, if you're going through surgery, you need to give your body extra protein to heal. Also, like lots of nutrients, lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, um, healthy fats, good protein. And then as you go through chemotherapy or radiation, there are different diets, or not diets, there are different foods that you might need to eat. You might need to accommodate mouth. A lot of people going through chemo get mouth sores. So, you're not going to be able to eat the same foods then. So how do we create food that is going to be palatable for you? Sometimes it completely changes your taste buds. So when I work with clients, it's a very customized approach. And we really look at, okay, how do we adjust to the situation that you're in? But at the end of the day, it's really, there's a lot that you can do with nutrition to set yourself up for better treatment outcomes and allow you to bounce back from treatment. Because that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize either. Once cancer treatment ends, there's a long road that people have to go through to start feeling good again. And specifically for breast cancer patients, if you lost a breast, if you lost your hair, if your hair was a part of your identity, like for me, I mean, I'm lucky I didn't have to go through chemo, but I've always had sort of this long, my hair is up right now, but I've like really long hair. And it's one of those things that makes me feel good about myself. And, if you lose your hair and your eyebrows and your eyelashes, again, in our society, for a lot of women, that's a big part of your identity. And so there are ways that there are a lot of great organizations out there that help women feel a little bit better in their bodies. I actually work um, so I have my own private practice, but here in Portland, I'm also a member of the Rose City Sexual Health Collective. So I provide holistic nutrition support and mindfulness techniques to clients that are working with therapists. And if you are going through cancer and you're trying to reclaim your body and you've lost a breast, or you're having other gynecological issues that are having a great impact on your sex life, because that's a big thing that we don't talk about either. There are resources out there to help you find yourself again, help you explore other realms of your love life or your sexuality. It doesn't have to be with another partner. It can just be with you. How do you feel good in your body again? And that's a very personal journey, but there are people out there like myself who can help, because it's important to feel good, especially when you feel like you got a new lease on life. A lot of breast cancer patients have to go on hormone blocking medications that can really affect your drive, and can be very frustrating when you feel like, wow, cancer took this, and now it's taking my relationship, or just my relationship with myself. And so that's a journey, but it's not something that you have to live with.
So, what is one thing that a woman can do? Maybe she has a lower sex drive or things changed after she was diagnosed with cancer. What's one thing she could do?
Sure. So if you are in a little bit of your question cut off, but I think you're asking what's one thing a woman can do who has low sex drive. Yeah. So one of the first steps, I kind of have a specific protocol I use, is to balance your blood sugar. And balancing your blood sugar, because when you're on a sugar roller coaster, your energy is fluctuating, your sleep might be affected, you are keeping your body in a state of stress if you're on a blood sugar roller coaster. So making sure that you're eating a balanced meal, not trying to avoid simple carbohydrates like candy, cakes, and cookies and stuff. Or if you are going to eat carbohydrates, going for more complex carbohydrates and pairing them with protein and fat, like eating balanced meals is important. That's a really, from just a nutritional perspective, that's where we start. Also, are you sleeping? That is so key. And I know a lot of young moms, or not even young moms, just moms in general, they're kind of like, yeah, I became a mom, I don't you become a mom as opposed to a woman, maybe, with your partner. And sleep is so huge in that. Sleep is such a basic need. So working on sleep, working on blood sugar, that's really where you start. And as your energy comes up, you can start, well, this is more than one tip, but you can start inviting more just pleasure into your life. Are you taking time during your day to actually do something that you enjoy, even if it's just stopping for a moment, noticing, like in Portland, there's so many roses and they smell beautiful. And I make a point on my walks when I'm taking my dog out. If I see a really nice rose, I take that 5 seconds and I smell it. And in that moment, I've invited pleasure into my life.
Yes. I know. I think it's underestimated how you have to be intentional, really, about finding pleasure, finding joy, seeking those things out. Let's end with a tip to encourage women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want.
Okay. I would say, and just remember, I think one of the themes of this is just remembering the voices that tell you you can't do this, or you have no right to, or you should probably think about A, B, and C. They're always going to be there. They're going to pop up. And you have a choice whether or not you want to listen to them. And you can get curious about them. You don't have to shame that voice or yell at that voice. You can acknowledge that voice, and you can let that voice go, and you can go ahead and do the thing. And so I think that would be my top tip, is do the thing in spite of yourself. That's the pathway to badassery.
And how can we connect with you?
I love connecting with people. I'm on Instagram. My account is at Juni Be Well, Juni, the letter B, Well. I do a lot of like nutrition stuff. I talk a lot about breast cancer, hormone balance, and I also have a podcast. It's called Tata Cancer, and it is for mainly focused on women who are diagnosed a little bit younger, because there's different issues that come up. You can find that on any podcast, bewell.com, and you can there's a little contact form if you want to email me just to say hi. I always love hearing from people, or I offer a free consult. I've got several freebies there, and one freebie your audience might be interested in is I'll have a free download. It's called a self-love dance party playlist. And so for those moments when you want to do, maybe you want to do some chores around the house, or go for a workout, or just hang out with your friends and have a little dance party, this is a playlist full of songs that will pump you up, because they're all about being a badass and self-love. And they're all like those songs that you can't not get up and move to or feel positive. So if you need to just sort of pump it up a little bit, that's on my website. And I'll also make sure to send you the link.
Perfect. And will you say your website name again, because it cut out for a second?
Oh no. Okay. Yeah. It's junibewell.com. So Juni, the letter Bewell.com.
Okay. Thank you so much, Juni. You've been a total badass, and I've enjoyed hearing your story.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And with that, we'll end our show. To all the badass women out there staying in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, own it and get after it. Now let's get into the 5 takeaways from the episode. Number 1, decide to move forward despite your fear. Take little steps and be willing to be uncomfortable, and do it over and over again. Number 2, pain is okay. Pain is just a call to grow or to learn that got a little bit loud. Number 3, everything is an opportunity to learn more about yourself. Number 4, health is a lifelong journey. Mindfulness and being curious and cultivating a loving relationship with yourself that's not about shame. And number 5, do something you enjoy. When you go on a walk, stop and smell the flowers or a rose. In that 5 seconds, you're inviting pleasure into your life. Okay, make sure tune in on Thursday so that you can hear 3 reasons why Juni is so badass. Talk to you then.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass, and get the chance to be on a future spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.